Just talk about what drew you into working in the Broadway pits, and if you have time, could you also maybe you've also worked in a lot of symphonies, so could you maybe talk about some of the differences between the two worlds that you've worked in?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually got into the Broadway scene here in New York by winning an audition for the Radio City Christmas show. The Christmas Spectacular is the only audition here in the city that you can take for a show. I happened to get lucky to get my resume picked to go to the audition because the screening process is pretty rigorous, and I won. And so in between 2011 and 2019, I won that show 5 times. And then I connected with some people that were there, went in on their shows a little bit, got in on some other shows from there. And so that's kind of how I broke into Broadway. And it's it's a very unique experience to sub a book, because what happens is, you know, your colleagues who want you to sub well because they need to feel free that they can take over work and go and have somebody dependable in their chair so they don't get in trouble with their own management. They will give you a copy of the book, and it's always good to take your own recording of what you want to hear, but also the shows that I work on anyway take a recording from the board, which means the entire mixed soundboard and then a video of the conductor. And between those two materials, with however much time you have, you can really like do the play along with the recording, watch the conductor, know exactly how these things are going to happen, and train your ear to really sit in and play those shows, because you get one opportunity to go in and play and sound like whoever's has that chair. So that can be kind of intimidating, but if you can work really hard and you can prep it well and kind of color your sound so that you're sounding like what's fitting in that moment, you'll do okay. And I've been doing that since 2012, and that's how I pretty much make my living. In terms of the difference between that kind of work and symphony work, I think the biggest thing is just you have that time, you have process, right? So whereas if I give you an orchestral part, you can go listen to a number of recordings, but you get to rehearse before those performances, right? And you know kind of what to expect. You know that you're going to go on stage. You know that other people are going to be there with you. You're all going to be learning this experience in real time. Whether or not any of us have played the pieces before, it's always a new experience with a different conductor. And so you're there and open and learning. Whereas on a Broadway show, you go to these places, and depending on the show, some people have been there for a year. Some people have been there for, in the case of Lion King, which I go on pretty regularly. I'm going there tonight, actually. Some of the people in that pit have been there since '01, you know? And so like somebody that's played that show is not necessarily showing up in the mindset to say, oh, I have a lot to learn today, because they're probably just trying to mentally get through the show. Because as we all know, if you have to repeat something over and over and over again, it does take mental strength to kind of be there. So those people are going to want to sit next to somebody that is going to be just very calm, very low maintenance, maybe not even say all that much besides hi some days. And, you know, we have to learn how to go into those situations and not take that approach personally, and also not to judge. Because I think in school we all learn, oh, if you're going to play an orchestral piece, you need to learn this. You need to study the score. You need to be super prepared for any tempo or any kind of variation. In a Broadway show, you don't have that. You're just there filling in for their show. And so you want to be like the least pressure presence that you can. And so that means a big amount of flexibility in both the way you play and the way that you interact with people. It's not always about, you know, you going in and being the most friendly. Sometimes it's about you giving this person the space they need to have a successful night. So for me, I think those are the two biggest differences between going and reading a Broadway show at a first glance, and then really having that week with an orchestra to kind of play and learn how they approach a certain piece.